Hello and a very warm welcome to the latest Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X and Twitch. So a very good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community who without we wouldn't be able to make this show each week. So thank you as always. Coming up this week on the podcast, Saints got back to winning ways with an impressive 2-0 win at West Brom on Friday evening. Going to look back over that one. And on Tuesday night, Saints are at home to playoff hopefuls Hull City. Ant Northgraves from the To Hull and Back podcast is going to join us later to help preview that game. My name's Martin Starke, and joining me this week are Steve Grant, the owner of SaintsWeb, Alfie House, senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Glen Cour, writer of the blog League One -10. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 265 of the Total Saints podcast. First up is the weekly shout to the Patreon community, whose monthly contributions support our show. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And as well as supporting the podcast, each of the tiers has different perks. You get access to an ad-free version of the podcast. There's the TSP t-shirts and the merch bundles that we do. There's the FPL, and you get access to some of the TSP events as well. Now, the ad-free version of the podcast is available on Spotify now. So if you link your Spotify and your Patreon accounts, you can listen to the ad-free pod directly through the Spotify app. And earlier this month, you might recall we launched the new look TSP shop. If you're a Patreon, you get a personal discount code to use. There's hoodies, t-shirts and mugs, loads more things coming in the next few weeks as well. If you want to take a look, it's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. And if you'd like to get involved in supporting TSP each month, just head over to patreon.com/Total Saints podcast for more details. All the links are in the podcast show notes, and you'll find them in the YouTube description as well. Now, just a quick reminder that we did record an extra midweek podcast on Thursday. That's where we covered off the Bristol City game. We're not going to gloss over it tonight. We have kind of done that one and put it to bed. There were some bits about Jason Wilcox in there as well. So do check that out in all the usual places. Bounce back ability, I think, was the buzzword on Friday night as Saints got back to winning ways with a decent 2-0 win away at West Brom. Alfie, we kind of questioned how the team would respond and we weren't too sure, but it turned out all right on Friday in the end.
Yeah, I don't know what your predictions were on the Thursday night pod, but I think we were all a bit worried just simply because West Brom are such a good side at home. Obviously, Tuesday wasn't a brilliant performance. Russell Martin came out afterwards and said it wasn't very far off being a good performance, but he actually said on Friday that he sort of watched back what he said, and actually he was wrong. It wasn't a good performance at all. So I think we were all a little worried about that. West Brom had conceded just 1 goal in their last 5 home games, all of which they'd won. But the performance was excellent and the response was absolutely brilliant. Apart from 10 minutes before halftime, where it was a little bit worrying, they were sort of constantly firing in down that left and getting balls into the box. Jack Stevens had to clear one off the line, a couple of seconds after a potential handball penalty. But other than that, it was brilliant. 2 bits of quality have won it again. Ryan Fraser's finish is so nice, and then the subs that they can bring on is such a luxury, isn't it? Really, that 60-minute to 75-minute period was for me where they really rubber stamped the 3 points, because they'd had next to no control of the game in the last sort of 15 or 30 minutes, really, because they had about 40% of the ball and then 50% of the ball in 2 15-minute periods. They brought those 3 subs on: Joe Revo, David Brooks, and the other one's lost me, so I do apologise. And then after that, they had 80% of the ball. Yeah, some of those. Yeah, excellent in the build-up for the goal as well. And they had 80% of the ball in that time, and they just sort of ran West Brom ragged, and they sort of deserved. They showed they deserved to win, and they got the result. Obviously, the weird thing is Carlos Corberán's sending off in the first 6 minutes of the game, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I've never seen anything like that, and I'm sure it helped Saints massively. But yeah,
we probably never will see anything like that either.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if the rules are the rules, and then that's what's got to happen. But it was a stupid decision, a rush of the blood to the head, I suppose. But I did want to just credit Russell Martin for some tactical changes as well. I'm no expert; I don't fully understand the game, as I said before, but there were some obvious things that he did, and building up with Jack Stevens in a free. So it was a 4-back in defence, but when they're in possession, it was a free. And sort of the reason for that was West Brom always press as a 2, and that meant you could just turn that to a 3 versus 2 at the back, and there's always an option to play out. So you weren't giving the ball away like there were sometimes against City. And Shea Charles, the role of Shea Charles as well, he was playing alongside Will Smallbone, but he wasn't the sort of the midfield 6. He was just hanging off to the right, actually playing in behind Carl Walker-Peters. And basically, Russell Martin just found a way to address the fact that both of the wing backs had been getting caught behind over and over again in the defeat of Bristol City. So 2 quick changes to the team, but given there was less than 72 hours to prepare for the game, really good from the staff.
Yeah, he said he'd had a sleepless night, didn't he? You kind of got the impression he'd been up studying it and kind of working out how to put it right. Steve, you were there. Russell Martin said this was our best win of the season. Was it up there for you? Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of I think it's our first away game against anybody kind of even within vague touching distance of where we are. So, yeah, I mean, and we've come out of it with what ended up being a very comfortable win, and I think that's on us that we made it comfortable with the way that we played. First half could have been 2 or 3 up before they had their little rally before half time, and second half, as Alfie said, the subs really wrestled back control after we kind of had that little sort of 10-15 minute ragged spell. And yeah, once we've made those subs, I don't think there was ever really any doubt that we were going to win the game. It was just a case of whether we'd get the second one to make the last period of the game a lot more comfortable for ourselves. And yeah, I mean the way they worked that goal was brilliant, wasn't it? Lovely little 1 and 2 touch knockings in and around the penalty area. I think 4 or 5 different players involved. And yeah, clinical finishing, and it obviously shows that the hit that David Brooks took from the Ashton Gate goalpost hasn't had too much lasting damage, fortunately.
It was a world away from Tuesday night, wasn't it, Glenn?
Yeah, massively different. I mean, the thing that obviously stood out from the Bristol City and Huddersfield games was how we managed to leak 6 goals in those games, having been pretty sound defensively. I mean, the obvious thing is the fact that Flynn Downs is missing and the amount of counter-attacks that he stops at source. So against West Brom, we had to find answers to, how to keep the back door shut, basically, without Flynn Downs being there. And the tactical changes that Alfie's already mentioned, they certainly helped, along with some real hard work by Will Smallbone to stay disciplined in that position. He didn't get caught ahead of the ball hardly at all. When he gets caught ahead of the ball, his sort of lack of pace is a problem getting back. But I thought the hardest working player was Stuart Armstrong. I've never seen him work back to cover that much ground defensively, because he was the one usually covering Jack Stevens when he got caught ball watching or whatever, or when he drifted slightly in field. He was also making sure that he was close to Smallbone, so Smallbone didn't get isolated. And the performances of Shea Charles and Stuart Armstrong were massively important to the midfield not getting overrun. So it was just a hell of a lot more compact in there. There was less chaos. We had a little, as the lads have said, we had a little sort of 10-15 minute spell where West Brom seemed to work out a way to hurt us, floating balls over the top of Jack Stevens and getting him round the back. But the start of the second half was kind of, it was kind of a non-event, really. I mean, we weren't in control, but I don't think they were really either. No. And not only did our subs improve our team, I think West Brom made a triple sub from the bowels of the stadium, wherever Cour was at that particular time. And it seemed to make them worse. They seemed to lose a certain amount. And I wouldn't really usually mention a West Brom substitution, but Jed Wallace's face when he got substituted was absolutely perfect. And as he used to play for them down the road, I think it's worth mentioning. It was just really funny seeing him sat on the bench with this face like a bulldog. He didn't look particularly happy about anything. So,
yeah, they didn't really have any depth, did they, off the bench? That none of those subs offered anything.
Well, Dean Garner is one of their better attacking players, just back from the AFCON, and he got the crossover, which I think it was Yakuslu who had that header that Bazunu saved, good save in the last few minutes. But other than that, I think West Brom got weaker as the game went on, and we got stronger. But it was a very, very good performance from start to finish, and exactly what we needed to prove to Leeds, Ipswich, Leicester that we're not going to go away. We're not going to lose 4 games in a row.
Mostly Leeds fans, isn't it?
Yeah, mostly Leeds fans. I thought Leeds got promoted last Tuesday or whatever it was, but yeah, it was a very important performance for for self-confidence as well. We can go again after a setback. We don't have to lose 4 games every time. We can go again. We will go again. And I think that the tactical tweaks that Russell Martin made it an excellent performance all round.
Jack Stephens, Steve, when we saw him kind of shoehorned into the side before, it didn't really work. And I was kind of fearing the worst when I saw his name on the team sheet, notwithstanding that we had conceded 6 goals in 2 games and something probably had to change. So it was interesting for him coming in at the other side. And as Alfie's kind of alluded to, and indeed I think written about today, it was a nice bit of fluidity at the back, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised when it turned out he was lining up sort of left-hand side, because I mean, obviously he's played a lot at right back during his career, and obviously Walker Peters has demonstrated he's more than capable on the left-hand side. So that felt like a more natural sort of order of things. But of course, what we hadn't reckoned with was this kind of sort of back 3 effectively that we were playing in possession, which allowed Walker Peters basically the freedom of the right hand side, while Ryan Fraser was obviously causing plenty of trouble down the left. So yeah, I mean it wasn't. I don't think many of us would have expected that change. I mean, I know people have been whinging on that Ryan Manning supposedly had an absolute shocker on Tuesday night, but I didn't think he was any worse than anybody else, quite frankly. His positioning is his positioning, and it's very clearly done deliberately. It's not that Ryan Manning constantly gets caught in field. He's clearly being told to be there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he wouldn't be playing any games if he's completely disregarding the manager's instructions all the time. So yeah, it was a surprise change, unless there were fitness implications maybe, but no, I mean Stephens largely did all right. I mean, most of the first half was all right, apart from that, as we've mentioned, that sort of slightly iffy 10 minutes at the end of the first half where they decided to switch the ball over to that side constantly. It was the one kind of period where he didn't get an awful lot of support in front of him, relatively briefly, so they were able to kind of overload a little bit. But other than the potential handball shout, which I mean, I've seen that penalty shout 7 or 8 times now, and I still don't know. It's one of those where his arm is kind of into his body, but then it also seems to hit the other hand as well. And I think also from where the referee stood, I mean, the ref's got no chance of seeing it.
No, it would have had to have been the linesman, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's completely blindside, so he's relying on the linesman to give him an indication. And I think if the linesman can't be certain, then ultimately you're not going to give it. If his arm is, as I say, is tucked into his body, and also from where the linesman stood, probably 40 yards away. For all he knows, it could have come off his thigh and gone over. So I think people saying, "Oh, it's a nailed-on penalty and it's an absolutely disgraceful decision." I think, frankly, it's not. I don't even think VAR, if it was in action, I don't think that would overturn that one, to be honest.
It would have taken them 10 minutes, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, certainly.
I just want a quick word on the goals as well. Alfie, obviously, Ryan Fraser's goal, one off the training ground, but one from a Premier League match last weekend, potentially.
Yeah, he did say that maybe Matt Gill had watched the Newcastle game, and there's no shame in that. Is there? You see something that works in a Premier League game, then take it. I mean, it requires a bit of quality, doesn't it? And Stuart Armstrong provides that. So it's just a very simple short pass from Shea Charles, and then he whips it right across the defence, and Ryan Fraser's there, and he's so good at that finish cross goal, isn't he? With his right foot and just sort of placing it into the far corner. But the second goal as well. I mean, they're both brilliant bits of quality. Yeah. Samadozi and Joe Rebo both involved in the second goal, obviously, with David Brooks finishing it. And I love the way that he sees the ball coming to him. He takes one touch to absolutely power it past the defender, and then from there, it's such an easy finish for him. And it really sealed the win. And first for David Brooks, and hopefully it'll be the first of quite a few this season.
You kind of forget, don't you, Steve, that Brooks actually hasn't played that many games. He had a great start when he came on. Obviously, he played that cup game for Bournemouth as well. It's still going to take him a little while to get up to speed.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, much like Ryan Fraser at the start of the season, I don't think the the aim would have ever been that he's going to be playing 90 minutes, even anytime soon, really. But you know that he's got the energy to do half an hour of that. And the quality that he's far better than most in the division at doing what he does. And he retains possession. He runs at players. He creates space. He's got the eye for the pass through that we saw last Saturday against Huddersfield, that he can play that sort of little blind pass through the eye of a needle, really. And yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous levels of depth that we've got in those attacking areas when everyone's available. And when you bring in Sulemana off the bench as well, when you bring in Joe Aribo, how ultimately that you kind of look at it and you think, well, how do other championship sides compete with the teams that have got parachute payments? Because Ipswich are completely bucking the trend, because frankly none of the other sides are anywhere near the us, Leicester and Leeds.
I just want to talk about Aribo as well, Glenn. Just back from the AFCON, straight into the squad. He would have played on the Sunday night, wasn't it? And then travels back and comes on and puts a shift in. It would have been quite easy for him to say, "Oh, I'm not ready," or "I haven't." We only got back recently, and he seemed to be up for it, and did also contribute to that goal as well.
Well, to be brutally honest, he didn't play much for Nigeria in the tournament. He didn't. He was getting 5 minutes here or there. One game he came on the 91st minute. Obviously, he would have been training out there, and he'd have had the travelling home, which is obviously tiring. But I don't know when he got home. The final
just
was
a
on
surprise
Sunday,
to see him in the squad. Actually, I just thought,
I wasn't at all. I think Russell Martin said before the Bristol City game that he would be available for. So Aribo was obviously back in the country at that point, I'd have thought. So maybe late Monday, early Tuesday. So I wasn't really surprised to see him out there. And my problem with Joe Aribo has always been he's looked incredibly casual at times, but he didn't look casual at all when he came on. He came on, and it's like, I want to get my place back in the team. I'm going to show you what I can do, which is exactly what you want off the bench. You want players to come on and make a difference. So, we've had a number of games this year where players have come on, and the level of the team has gone up, and that's exactly what you want. I mean, when you think about it, on paper at that particular time, we had a midfield three of Smallbone, Aribo, and Stuart Armstrong, and you're thinking there ain't a lot of defensive nous in there, but he carried on doing the role that Shea Charles was doing. They didn't rein Walker Peters in really at that point. It was so Aribo came in and did the same thing, and he added energy, which is not something that you'd ever accuse Aribo of doing before. But no, I thought he was excellent when he came on, and being away with Nigeria and having the run to the final, even though he didn't actually play that much, it's probably been good for him mentally to go and do that. And he's come back refreshed, I guess, and it's like signing a new player, really.
Yeah, this isn't new information, but being able to bring on people like him, David Brooks, Samadozi, when you haven't even got Flynn Downs and Cherhams in the squad, it's an absolutely ridiculous group of players to be able to call on. So it's going to be interesting to see what starting 11 we end up with on Tuesday. Yeah,
which we will get onto in just a moment. I want to do TSP Player of the Week as well. Just a quick one, though. It's Leeds versus Leicester on Friday, and I'm trying to work out what the best possible outcome for us is. Have you been looking at this, Steve? Have you been?
I think
because it's two points that go missing again.
Yeah, I'm kind of settling on a draw for that one. I mean, part of me thinks Leeds winning keeps Leicester in touch, and because I still think they're catchable. But the problem, if Leeds beat Leicester again, then all of a sudden, I mean, you know what they're like. They'll be chirping till the cows come home, which might be fine. I mean, lull them into a false sense of security. But I think beating the league leaders again would give them the confidence to kind of keep going on this handy run they're on. So I think clipping their wings slightly while keeping both of them in touch, and as you say, a point goes missing with a draw. So I think that's probably the best. But ultimately, you can make a case for any of the three any of the three results, it's like, well, okay, well we've gained on one of the two teams at least.
Well, I'm sure the Leeds fans that are watching now will be putting their predictions into the comments. So let's see how you think that one's going to work out. Let's do just player of the week then before we wrap up the review. Alfie, who stood out for you? There was a few, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably make a case for quite a few players, because even people like Sekou Mara did sort of, what was expected of them in sort of coming in and playing back to goal quite a few times. But I think that you could probably put all three of these down. I'd say Stuart Armstrong, definitely. Jan Bednarek and Taylor Harbell as well, but I'll say Stuart Armstrong.
Stuart Armstrong, yeah, I'd agree with that. Steve?
Yeah, Stu was the standout for me in a team of excellent performances. But I think, given that it was his first league start this season, was it, for Mara? And he led the line superbly. I thought he was always involved. He was showing strength against their big centre backs. He was able to hold the ball up and bring players into play on the handful of occasions we had to go kind of bypass the midfield a little bit. He ran the channels. He had good little interplay with his teammates, and I think I kind of wonder whether that sort of performance against decent opposition is kind of maybe a breakout performance for him. We'll see.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Glenn, any other names to add to that list?
I'd just like to say on Sekou Mara, his role in the first goal can't be understated, because he's got himself in exactly the right place to, and he's done it without fouling him, because he's just stood there.
That's a great point.
It was not a foul, just standing there. He obviously had that role assigned to him on the training ground when they were working out that free kick, and he's carried it out superbly without even getting close to committing a foul, which is why it was so pathetic that West Brom they were complaining about everything from when the manager got sent off, which was referee had to make that decision. And I'd like to think, going off piste a little bit here, but I'd like to think the Stevens handball shout, I'd love to think part of that was Cry Wolf. The referee just got so fed up with West Brom moaning at him from the moment Cour got sent off. He just thought, well, I'm not even remotely going to give that. So I'd love to think that was the case. But
the ref had a good game, to be honest.
I thought he did as well.
There weren't that many decisions to give, but I mean, the penalty he can't see, and as we say, I mean, you could stick 100 people in the room, and I think you'd get 51-49 either way. I don't think you get agreement on it. So fair enough.
Yeah, but back to the original question. Apart from those mentioned, I just got to say David Brooks. I think because it was such, I mean, we all know his story, and it is slightly jarring in some respects getting a player on loan from Bournemouth, but he is so good, and it was just a lovely moment when he scored that goal. I just thought he just really felt it was a sort of great moment for him. And,
great celebration as well.
Yeah, it's just a really good moment, and I liked his. I don't know if everyone saw the Russell Martin interview at the end where Brooks apparently said to him, "You wanted to kill me when I gave the ball away." After that, and so he's obviously a guy that's just here to enjoy his football, and that's what he's doing at the moment. So I'll go with David Brooks.
Good, nice. Now, it's another 2-game week at St Mary's. Hull City are the visitors on Tuesday night. So I'm pleased to say that to help us preview this one, Ant is with us, Ant Northgraves from the To Hull and Back podcast. Welcome back. Good to see you, Ant. I know we caught up back in October, I think, wasn't it? There's been a lot of football that's been played there. Let's just talk about the weekend. You left it late.
We did very late. That's probably the favourite goal we've scored that I've celebrated in a long time. We've got a habit at the minute of going in front in games and then having a second half of biting your nails and being under the cosh a bit. So I'm not sure that tactical work at St Mary's. So I'm hoping that we've gone maybe a bit more positive instead of trying to hold on to 1-0 leads, because it's jarring as a fan.
I mean, you've had a couple of tough games against teams that have been fighting at the bottom, and you've come out with the points. But these, and I think we have found the same sort of thing. Some of the teams that are perhaps in and around the relegation zone are more of a challenge than you think.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're going to be really physical and try and impose themselves on the game. And we've well documented a very big January, bringing in a lot of quality players for this, especially at this level. But these players are flair players. They're exciting players. You look at your Zararis, your Fabio Cavallios, players like going away to Rotherham and Huddersfield, are teams that are fighting for their lives. I mean, Rotherham are pretty much dead and buried, let's be honest. But someone like for Fabio Carvalho to go to Huddersfield and get, every time he touches the ball, someone's pressing him, putting, that physicality onto him. These kind of players will struggle with that. So it's a good job that we've got, a bit of spine in the side like Jacob Greaves and players like Regan Slater that have been there, done that, and they're all right with the physicality, because you've got to find that balance in the squad. And obviously with these new players coming in January, it's about finding that balance now and getting them settled.
Were you happy with all the new additions and the players that came in? Was it a good window, some good business done?
Yeah, no, really happy. I mean, some of these players, it's pretty unbelievable, really, that we've managed to recruit them and bring them to Hull City. Especially with the teams that they're being, well, that we was in competition with. I think players like Fabio Carvalho could have gone to a Premier League side, could have gone to Leeds. Anas Arori, won the title with Burnley last season. I think he had over 10 goal contributions from the wing. Ivor Panda, I'm not going to pretend to know much about, goalkeeper that we brought in. I think he's one for the future. But Ryan Giles as well. I mean, he's 20 odd assists in 2 seasons, and we've not had a natural left back fit all season, which has been like the problem position for us all season. So it was a really good bit of business to bring him in, and you just feel like we've sort of littered the side. Well, I said on my episode that it feels like we aimed for the top 10 this season, and we've got ourselves into a position where we can realistically try and get into the top 6. And I think the owners have turned around to Rosenior and gone, I know we're a year or 2 ahead of schedule, but do you fancy going for it? And Rosenior, being the guy he is, has gone, yeah, absolutely. And they've backed him this window and pretty much done a bit of a Hail Mary to try and get into the top 6 this season.
It's going to be tight around there, isn't it? Because what are you, 8th at the moment? I think level on points with Coventry and Norwich, who are 6th and 7th, and like a point on Tuesday, and you're back into the top 6. So you're certainly there or thereabouts, but it's going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean it's mad because like the top 4 are just in a league of their own. So realistically, there's I think from 5th to about 15th are all vying for those final 2 playoff positions. So it's going to be whichever side can keep the most consistency, can keep their best players fit. I mean, Coventry to me look like the most likely side to sort of gate crash that top 6, because they've just gone on one of those late season runs that you always see in the Championship where they come from nowhere and end up finishing in the top 6. So I think Coventry, West Brom, us, and Norwich at the minute, I think, are probably the ones that are vying for those last 2 spaces. But Preston have appeared out of nowhere again after looking they were falling out. It's a crazy season, so it's just going to be who can grind out those results now. What is it, like 14, 15 games left? Just try and stay in these big. I mean, we've got a huge month, a really, really tough month of fixtures this month. So let's see where we are at the end of this one, and go from there, really.
Glenn, I'm going to ask you to cast your mind back to October and that game, 2-1. I mean, we left it late, didn't we? That was Ryan Fraser with the winner at the end, but that was proper late. We went through that kind of phase. There was a couple of games, wasn't there, where we weren't scoring till about 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, and I think even back then we saw Hull away as before they signed all the players, we saw Hull away as a very tough place to go to. So to get that win in the last minute was a brilliant 3 points, and probably a 2-point bonus on what we actually expected at the start of the day. Back then we didn't quite have the sort of style of play nailed down, I don't think. There was a bit of toing and froing with team selections and whatnot, but that seemed to be the start of the sort of Ryan Fraser wee man cult starting, because that was when he started coming to the fore, coming off the bench and basically winning points for us left, right, and centre. So I expect Hull to be better than they were back then, but then so are we. So it's whether it has much relevance to the game on whatever day it's on. I lose track these days.
Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah,
Tuesday. Whether it's got any relevance to that, I don't really know. I mean, the last game was fairly even. I think, from what I remember, if before we scored the late winner, if you had to pick a team that probably just about shaded it, it was probably us. But I think Hull seem to have. I know Liam Delap. I think he's injured at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah.
So with him,
I don't know when he's due back.
The likes of Philogene, a very dangerous attacking side. So I was more
don't
worried
forget Billy
about.
Sharp.
Billy Sharp. Even
Yeah,
he's
Billy
about as
Sharp.
old. He's about as old as me, but he's he's
Still
still
knows where the
around.
goal is. Yeah.
Absolutely, and fair play to him. So I was more worried about Hull from an attacking sense than I am a lot of the teams that we've played against. So Hull are someone who are a team who I think could score goals against us, whereas some of the other teams we play, you look at their forwards and think, there's not a lot there. But with Hull, it's different. So it'll be an interesting challenge to see if we can keep it as tight as we did against West Brom, because you've got these line of three players in Philogene, Carvalho, Zarori behind Billy Sharp. I noticed in your last game, and they're going to take some watching. So it's going to be an interesting game.
How will you approach the game on Tuesday night? And is it have they been able to kind of like rotate the squad a little bit? Because like us, we've been playing Saturday, Tuesday. So is there a pretty settled starting 11 at the moment, or do you think there might be a few changes from the weekend and then with a view to another game on Saturday?
I think he felt like he's got a starting 11 that he's happy with, but I think realistically, I mean, like we say, Billy Sharp's been starting games, and I think he started probably more games than he expected to when signing. I'm pretty sure his role was meant to be come off the bench and score. If we're desperate of a goal in the last 10 minutes of a game kind of player. But with the injury to Liam Delap, and then Aaron Connolly got absolutely flatlined by Angus Gunn, so he had to have a few weeks off with concussion protocol. And then we've signed Noah Ohio on loan from Standard Liège because of the striker issue that we had. So he's not been starting, I think, because he's so new, but he's looked really promising when he's come on, and I think a lot of the fans are clamouring for him to start because he's a very fast and physical striker, Ohio, and I've liked what I've seen from him so far. So I think there's a lot of fans that would prefer him to start, obviously, from Sharp, because let's be honest, he's 38 years old now. His goal scoring days probably are behind him at this level. Not to say that he's obviously not lost that finishing touch, but we aren't getting the ball to the positions where he needs to be, and we're asking him to play deeper, and I don't think that's his game. If you're going to play Billy Sharp, he needs to be in the box, and we need our sort of middle striker to drop deep and try and link the attack and bring the wingers into the game, and he struggles to do that, obviously, because he's not as quick as he used to be. So yeah, I think a lot of fans are clamoring for Ohio to start. I think Omer, the Turkish lad we signed in January, whenever he's come on, he's looked really positive. It was a cracking ball for Greaves' winner against Huddersfield on the weekend. I think he's probably due a start. And Carvalho has been quite underwhelming, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him drop to the bench against Southampton. Last couple of games, he's really struggled with the physicality. I mean, Southampton probably aren't going to be as physically imposing as Rotherham and Huddersfield were trying to bully us on the ball. I think it's going to be similar to what it was in the MKM, where it's two teams that want to pass the ball and get and exploit space on each other and be a bit of an end-to-end game. So I feel like he's got a couple of decisions to make in most positions. I think Seri's back available now after the AFCON as well. Obviously, he won AFCON with the Ivory Coast, so I think he had an extra game off. I don't know if he was saving him for Southampton, but we all expected him to be in the squad for Rotherham, but he wasn't. For Huddersfield, sorry. So he will probably go straight back into the starting 11 alongside Morton. But other than that, it's pretty much a settled starting 11 now. I think that barring Liam Delap, we've probably got our full strength squad for the first time in weeks.
That's not really what we want to hear, is it? But Steve, do you think there's a bit of added pressure because it's the game in hand? Because this is the one that got moved for the FA Cup, wasn't it? Of course, Leeds managed to get their game in. So this is we've been able to say, well, we've got the game in hand, and we won't be able to do that on Wednesday morning.
Well, at the end of the day, if we've won it, then it won't be a problem.
Yeah.
That's ultimately that's ultimately the way to look at it. And we've won 11 in a row at home now. So I mean, you've got to be going into every home game. It doesn't matter who it's against, and actually looking down who we've got left to play at home. It's mostly, I mean, obviously most teams are below us, but it's mostly teams sort of below, sort of 10th and below. So home games have got to be our bread and butter when everybody is keeping up the insane pace that the top four is. I mean, you're looking at currently the team in fourth. At current rate are going to get 95 points, which is absolutely ludicrous. So there can be no let up. Unfortunately, you don't get to kind of throw in kind of sort of half-assed is probably the wrong word, but just a game where you're not fully up at the races as we were on Tuesday at Bristol City. So it's another one where you've got to go full steam ahead. But also what we do have, as we've obviously mentioned a lot this season, is the strength in depth off the bench.
Yeah.
And that where we can go full pelt for an hour with the starting 11, make 3 or 4 changes and continue to go at full pelt without affecting the quality of the 11 on the pitch, which is something as I say, most of the teams in the division don't have. Most of the teams can do an hour to 70 minutes, and then you're having to make changes for fatigue reasons. But the players you're bringing on are naturally not going to be quite as good. I mean, Hull's depth, looking, from what Ant said, does seem to be a little bit certainly deeper than it was when we played them back in October. But it's still, you would still expect that as the home team, as the form team, that we're going to be mostly on the front foot. But it's one where ultimately, actually, Hull's style of play, where they like to be open. Rosenior is very much of the same sort of mindset as Russell Martin, really, in that he wants to dominate the ball. He wants to be on the front foot and attacking. And I mean, it should be entertaining, but I do kind of think that might play into our hands, especially at St Mary's.
Do you think Flynn Downs will be back in on Tuesday, Alfie? There was we were hoping he'd be starting on Friday, because it was almost like it was going to be a catastrophe if he didn't. Turns out it was okay in the end. We might have come up with a solution for the games that he can't play, but I'm sure that Russell Martin would hope to have him back on Tuesday, maybe.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When the Saints media team came in about 6:15 on Friday, they told me that Che and Flynn hadn't travelled, but I wasn't able to report it, and I was a little bit worried. I don't know, is the honest answer. I think he said that they were very close for Friday's game, and look, we don't know how honest he's being, because he could just be trying to make sure that West Brom prepare for all opportunities. But I'd like to think he'll be back, and if he is back, Flynn, he'll come straight back in. I'm pretty sure of that. There will be a focus on aggression and intensity, I think, because what Russell Martin was so let down by on Tuesday at Bristol City was, I think that just the lack of aggression, the lack of intensity, and he felt sorry for that because he didn't make the point enough after Saturday's game against Huddersfield, where they sort of got away with it because of a brilliant second half. He then didn't make the point to the players that they just weren't intense, weren't aggressive enough in the first half, and then that hangover and that carried on into the following week. So I think they'll be right up for it on Tuesday. I don't think there'll be any complacency. I think it'll be a nice sort of kick up the arse they've had in this really tough week, ready ahead of 2 home games. I'm intrigued to see what the 11 will be, because the team on Friday was designed specifically for West Brom. Does Ryan Manning come back in? And that means Jack Stephens coming out, which will be a tough decision for Russell Martin to make, because he's wanted to get Jack Stephens in for so long. He's come in and done so well. But would it make more sense to face a whole team which will probably try and be expansive themselves and try and play football with a team that has a Ryan Manning in and is slightly more, I don't know, forward focused is the wrong word, because they were forward focused on Friday, but I think you know what I mean. So I'm intrigued to see the 11. I think that if they're both available, I would put Cherdams and Flynn Downs both back in, but I can see the argument for sort of keeping Sekou Mara there, but maybe that's something we can discuss.
Yeah. I was going to suggest about Sekou Mara. I know, Glenn, you mentioned him slightly when we were doing the preview just now, but did he do enough for you? Would you keep him in that number 9? Because that's what we were talking about in previous weeks, wasn't it? Taking that opportunity.
I think he's better at number 9 than Adam Armstrong is.
Yeah.
So if that's it, with Che Adams being injured at the moment, I was quite happy with Mara's performance, the same as Steve was against West Brom. So I would leave him there if for nothing else, to enable Adam Armstrong to play on the right hand side where he's at his best. So, I mean, he may want to bring David Brooks back into the team, in which case Adam Armstrong will be centre forward. But I certainly think, whilst Mara didn't set the world alight, he didn't stink the place out either. So, and I do think the balance of the side looks better with either Mara or Adams playing up the middle, or Ross Stewart. Remember him? I'll keep mentioning him just in case everyone's forgotten him.
Guess we forget him. Let's get some score predictions for Tuesday. And how do you see this one? Another 2-1 maybe, because that seems to be the popular result at the moment. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, it's good. I'm wearing under no illusion how tough this game's going to be. I think it's probably done us a favour that this was rescheduled from when it was originally meant to be played, because we had hardly any players when we were meant to play it a few weeks ago. Injuries and AFCON and everything like that, we had like no players whatsoever. So it got rescheduled, obviously, and now we've got all our players in, and it seems like we've got a stronger side. So I'm a bit more optimistic than I would have been, but we 100% would be happy with a point from this game. I mean, look at the form that Southampton are in. The one loss in nearly 30 or something like that is crazy. The amount of quality that's at the top of this league from the 4 teams up there. So, and any points from your grounds would be good. So I'm going to be optimistic because I'm liking the resolve and the defensive structure in the side at the minute, and I do feel like that the attacking potential of this team will click eventually, and I feel like this is the game for some of these big players like the Cavaliers and the Zahoris that have been a little bit underwhelming at the minute to really step up and make a claim. And like we say, big players win big games, and this is one of those. So I'm going to be optimistic and go 1-1.
1-1, right? Okay, Steve.
Just had a quick look down Hull's recent results, and basically every game is decided by 1 goal. The last one that was a bigger margin was New Year's Day, where they somehow contrived to lose 3-1 at Sheffield Wednesday. Not quite sure how you managed that.
We're against 12 men on that day, though, to be fair.
Fair enough. Tends to happen. I mean, I think it's weird. I think it'll be open, but I think it'll be a tight scoreline. So I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I'm still not wholly convinced that we've solved the defensive issues on the strength of one performance, but we've obviously still got goals in us. So 3-2 win.
3-2. Entertaining game. Glenn?
Not quite as entertaining as that. I feel that a lot of what will happen is these 2 teams will cancel each other out to a degree. I think it'll be quite tight, and I think it might be one of those games where we kind of edge it, but we come away thinking, yeah, that was tight. We could just as easily have lost that. But I think the momentum is with us at the moment. I do think Hull will be better than they were in the first game, but I think we will be as well. So I'll go for a 2-1 win. I think I can't see Hull not scoring, as Steve just said. I think that we will get caught. Flynn Downs will make a difference if he is fit, but I feel that this is a game where it's going to be very, very difficult to keep a clean sheet. So I'll go for a 2-1 win.
Okay, and Alfie to complete the set.
Yeah, did anyone go for a win against West Brom, or do we all go for draws or losses?
I don't think any of us were that confident, were we? No, I don't think anyone
fair enough.
I actually even went further and put some money when I saw the lineup. I put a tenner on a home win just to cover myself in the hopeful reverse jinx, and obviously it worked. So
happy days. I will go through all the above reasons that they've named. I'll say 2-1 Saints, but I realised I forgot. I wanted to mention that I think, speaking of putting a tenner on when you see the lineup, I think Yab Bednarek is nailed on for a booking this week. On Tuesday, because it will mean he misses Millwall and Birmingham for a 2-match suspension for getting 10 yellow cards in the Championship. But it will mean he can play against Liverpool in the midweek, stay fit, and he won't miss any of the games like Leicester, for example, if he gets booked a bit later on. That doesn't reset the 10 bookings until 37 game weeks in the Championship. So I think he's nailed on for a booking on Tuesday.
Okay, well, bet responsibly, kids, and just bear in mind that we are nearly always almost wrong. So, Ant, thanks for coming on, mate. Thanks for that. Best of luck with the rest of the season, and enjoy Tuesday night. Cheers, Ant.
Yeah, cheers for having me on, lads. Good luck.
No worries.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you.
Cheers.
Ant joining us there to preview that game. A couple of bits before we finish. I just wanted to get the little update, if you don't mind, Alfie, on the Jason Wilcox thing, because this kind of like came out of the blue on Tuesday or Wednesday, wasn't it? We were talking about it on Thursday night pod anyway. And then obviously we've had another press conference since then, and he was asked about it after the game as well. It seems like it might not be as done a deal as some outlets were making it.
Well, it's certainly not a done deal. It's far from a done deal, but we knew that on Thursday as well, to be fair, because the club and Russell Martin were very clear that no approach has been made. Man United may well be interested in Jason Wilcox, but Russell then told us on Friday after the game that he'd gone and spoken to both Phil Parsons and Jason Wilcox themselves, and they both reassured him that there's absolutely nothing in it. But obviously, the same with anything, that might well change over the course of the year. But hopefully what it means is that Jason Wilcox is enjoying the opportunity. He's been given a big chance. He's the main guy here. He's fully running the project, and obviously at Man United that'll be slightly different. He'd be a smaller part of the team. But yeah, right now Russell Martin says there's nothing in it. So we'll have to wait and see.
Does that change anything for you, Glenn, or do you just still think it might end up just going at the end of the season if they want him?
It just increases my irritation. I mean, it's the way outlets like the Athletic and operate now, it's just tabloid. It's just tabloid, and David Ornstein and the likes of Fabrizio Romano. You used to be able to believe everything they said, and now it just seems to be like they're a story for hire to try and help out whatever rumour the big clubs want spreading around.
It's all client journalism, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's getting clicks onto their sites.
Yeah, client journalism is one phrase for it. There's a few others I can think of, but yeah, I'm not very impressed with the way it goes about. But that's, we've just got to shrug our shoulders and move on. I hope Jason Wilcox is inclined to sort of like be excited by the project he's got here and the responsibility he's got here, with kind of overall control of everything to want to keep doing it. But as Steve very eloquently put last week, it's just a job for these guys, and he's got no real affiliation to Southampton, other than that they gave him this opportunity to have this role. So if he if Manchester United are firm in their interest, I'd be very surprised still if he turned it down. But it just annoys me that it's in the papers for everyone to read, and that you then get the avalanche of social media, because it is one of the huge clubs that you're dealing with, and it's all designed to sort of like put pressure on and make sure that the person in question knows all about it. I mean, you've only got to think back to when Virgil van Dijk joined Liverpool. It was all through social media and through
#FreeVirgil.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember back to that at the time. It seems like every ex-Liverpool player that there ever was is working in the media somewhere, and everyone was giving their opinion. Oh, they should let him go. Yeah, free Virgil and all this stuff. And it's just nauseating when you're a club like us, and it always seems like, you're doing well. You can't have nice things. We've got to take this away from you and give it to one of the super wealthy clubs. No one was sniffing around Ruben Sellers last year, were they? So I suppose it's an indication that you're doing well, but it doesn't stop it. Even though we've seen it 100 times before, and especially when you're my age, you've seen it 100 times before. Yeah, it doesn't become any less annoying. But yeah, it is what it is. We just got to hope that either the interest doesn't actually materialise, or that Wilcox really likes the project he's got here and he wants to stick with it.
He might get himself a nice pay rise at the end of this season anyway, the way things are going.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? Good win as well for the women's team today, Steve. 2-1 at Birmingham. It's looking tight at the top of that table. I think Alfie set the table earlier on. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5 points between the top 5. And even if Palace win their game in hand, will only be a maximum of 3 off the top. So yeah, huge win today against Birmingham, who beat us in the reverse game. It's been slightly odd this season. Actually, our away form's been really good. It's the home form against the sides around us that's been a little bit ropey. Obviously lost to Palace last week. Previously lost to Sunderland, I think, at home, and Blackburn as well. So it's been a frustrating sort of up and down league season, but we're still in there fighting. And yeah, having got the win today, we're obviously off up to Sunderland next week, which another huge game. They somehow stayed above us when they were 3-2 down to Lewis in the 95th minute and somehow won the game. Which is fairly wild. So still below them, but yes, in touch and still in with a chance.
Which is all we can ask for at this stage of the season, I guess. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening this week. That's pretty much it. Don't forget you can follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. If you want to find us there, it's at Total Saints Pod. We post loads of stuff on TikTok as well at the moment, so give us a little follow on there. And as I mentioned at the start of the pod, we've got the new merch shop, the store, which you can check out. The address for that is shop.totalsaints.co.uk. You'll also find us on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Total Saints podcast. There's 4 different tiers on there. They range from £5 to £20 per month, and each of the tiers comes with different perks, including some shout outs for the patrons in the Francis Benali and the Mick Shannon tier. So to that end, thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe, and Mike E. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, and Mark Littlewood, who are in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Alfie. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We're going to see you again on Wednesday night. So make a little note for the calendar. Wednesday night, the next TSP at 7:15. So we'll see you then.